Hi there, it's Nicole for Lawn Fawn, and today's card is a shaker card featuring the snowy backdrop stamp set and then a bunch of other Lawn Fawn stamps and dies for a fun holiday shaker card. I always like to kind of lay out my scene elements when I'm creating a scene card, so that's what I was showing there. And I'm going to start with the background for the card today, which I have die cut with a stitched rectangle die first. I'm die cutting some watercolor cardstock. I wouldn't have had to have used the watercolor cardstock. I like how the Distress inks work with this, with the Tim Holtz watercolor cardstock, so I tend to like to use that when using the Distress inks. I'm going to go ahead and apply some Evergreen Bow Distress ink to this rectangle. Just going to work in circles coming from the edge of the paper, working my way onto it and blending it out so that it goes from really dark to gradually lighter. A lot of that near the bottom of the rectangle is going to be covered, so I don't need to worry about applying ink down there. Once I have my background inked, I am going to take the Snowy Backdrop stamp set, and I am in love with this Snowy Border stamp. It is wonderful for creating a snowy scene, and it's got both little snowdrops and stars, which I love the combination of the two of these. I'm going to ink that up with the Lawn Fawn Yeti ink, which is a great pigment ink, and stamp that over my Distress inked background. That's going to give me my snowy background for the cute little scene that I'm going to build here. I am using the moose from the Critters in the Arctic stamp set. In fact, I think this is the first time I've ever used that particular stamp from the stamp set. He is so cute. Then from the Joy to the Woods stamp set, and also both of these stamp sets are I think they're from last year. So mix and match. The great thing about Lawn Fawn stamps and dies is how well they mix and match with each other. You definitely don't have to stick to just one particular stamp set. So I'm stamping the trees from the Joy to the Woods stamp set, plus the cardinal and an ornament. I want to hang an ornament from his antlers. This card is very much based on one that I created last year that was pretty popular, that I'm linking to here in the video, that I used the Joy to the Woods stamp set and also created a shaker. It had a lot of vellum, so it had a few more layers going on with it, but this card was definitely inspired by that one. It was probably one of my all-time favorite holiday cards I've ever created, and it's also one I still get tons of questions about, so I thought I would go ahead and create kind of a new one for this year. I'm coloring in the moose here with some Copic markers. I started with my light color for the antlers and the stomach, and then I'm adding my base color, which is E55. The stomach area is actually E30. Then I'm going to go in with my darker color, my E57, and kind of outline some of those darker areas. And I'm just going to keep working on coloring and shading until I get him the way I want him to look. It takes a little bit of work. There's a little bit of difference between E55 and E57, enough that you're going to have to work to blend it out a little bit. It definitely will blend, and the stomach area is even lighter, so you're going to have to work to blend that as well. But it makes it worth it, and it builds up that color nicely. I ended with some of those dots to add some texture to not only the moose's body, but the antlers as well. I'm going to move on to the ornament, which is R24 and R46. Forgot to add those colors here. I will be using those same colors for the cardinal, so we'll show those here in a little bit across the bottom of the screen. For the trees, those are going to be E40 and E43. I'm going to start with my base color, the E40. I wanted them to be really light and not be so prominent in the card. I wanted them to be more of a background filler instead of really standing out. And I like this color combination. So next I'm going to go in with my E43. There's only two colors for these trees, and add a little bit of shading and go over all of those lines in these birch trees. Now I could definitely leave it like this and not add anything else. I did blend out just a tiny bit with my lighter E40 color, because I tend to not like any harsh lines with my Copic coloring. And I am going to do the same thing for all of the trees. Now the great thing about this particular card design, while these trees are fairly tall and will work for a vertical style card, I am doing a horizontal card, and a lot of this isn't going to be shown because it's going to be tucked behind some stitched hillside borders, snow borders. I'm going to be able to get more than just these 4 trees from these trees I've colored here by trimming them and using the excess or the rest of it there that I trim off as additional trees. Just a way to get more out of the pieces that you are already using. Here's that cardinal. Again, here are the red colors I used for both the ornament and the bird. I did pull in a little R39, which is a darker color for the cardinal that I didn't use for the ornament. And for the feet, I'll do a little E79. I'm going to take the coordinating dies now, place those over all these images, and die cut them with my Big Shot. And then I'll pop all of these out, and I can die cut a few more elements that I'm going to need to complete my card. I'm going to need to die cut that single tree one more time since I stamped it twice. Get rid of all the rest of these, pop all of this stuff out real quick. I always like to try to die cut as many of the images with one pass of the machine as possible. I'm die cutting another rectangle the same size as my background using that stitched rectangle die. Then I'll take these stitched hillside borders and I'm going to cut 2 borders from this single rectangle. This is a technique that I do a lot when I'm doing some sort of a border, whether it's waves or snow or green grass landscapes. When I want to layer them like this, I usually get a couple of borders from one rectangle. That way that stitched line is all the way around all 4 edges. Now for the frame on the front of my shaker card, I am using a scalloped rectangle die and that same stitched rectangle die that I used for the background and the snowy borders. And by die cutting them together like this, I'm going to be able to get a really nice frame. I just use a little Post-it tape to hold that in place so it doesn't shift while running through my machine. I can save that inside piece. Actually would have been a good piece to use for these stitched hillside borders, but I wasn't thinking, so I'll just save that for another project. From a piece of transparency, I will also cut a frame that's a little bit bigger than the other one I used. I want it to fit behind the scalloped frame. I'm going to die cut that just from that transparency. And then I'm also going to need a backer for my for the shaker. So I'll die cut a solid piece of the scallop. I'm going to line up my frame with the backing piece and pop my background in place. And then I can remove the frame for just a minute while I layer on these snowy borders. And then I'm also going to need to tuck in my trees, some in front and some behind. And here's where I'm trimming those down so that I can tuck some of them back behind there. I'm going to trim off the top as well, so I can figure out exactly where I want all of these to go. I'm adding a little zig glue pin to these, trimmed off some of these double trees there. That little skinny piece left over from the tree on the right was perfect to add here. And then I can add my other border, trying to figure out exactly where I want all my tree pieces to go. Pop that in place. And then I need to add I decided I wanted to switch this tree. I wanted it to be in front. So that's why I was able to pop that off. Luckily, I didn't ruin my background. And then I can place this other tree right here. I'll be able to disguise that it's not quite tall enough by placing the moose in front of that. So just playing around a little bit with all of those trees to get them exactly where I want them to go. I'm going to use some glue dots on the back of the moose and attach him there in the forefront of this snowy scene. I'm going to need to place the cardinal on the outside of the frame so it doesn't get cut off because I wanted it sitting on top of the moose antlers. Place that ornament right there dangling. A little Wink of Style clear glitter brush pin on the ornament. And then a little glitter pin on the top piece. And then I'm using a fine tip black pin to draw the lines to hang that ornament from the antlers. I'm going to place a nice strong adhesive. I like the Glue Glider Permatack adhesive around the back of the frame, and then I'm taking that piece of acetate and securing it to the back of the scallop frame. And I'm going to double up my foam adhesive all the way around the 4 sides. That's going to give my shaker material plenty of room to move around in the shaker. I'm trimming my foam adhesive in half because that's going to give the shaker material plenty of room to move around in the shaker. So I'll finish securing my foam adhesive around all 4 sides. I want to make sure it butts up next to each other so the shaker material does not have any chance of escaping. And then I like to take a powder tool and go around the inside of the frame. It will help my shaker material to not stick to the sides of the foam adhesive. I'm sprinkling in some Pretty Pink Posh Sparkling Clear and Marshmallow Sequins. I'm going to pull off the backing paper for the shaker itself and tuck or just kind of get rid of that. Make sure nothing is sticking to the foam. Take my backer to the shaker and press it in place. And the inside of the shaker is now all finished. So shake that around and it gives a nice illusion of snow when you shake it up. So the recipient, it's a really fun interactive card for the recipient. I'll place the cardinal there with some glue dots to the front of the shaker. And then I need to work on my greeting. And I'm going to go ahead, I guess, and secure my card to a side fold card base from Simon Says Stamp. This is just a nice white card base. This is a really large shaker, so it's going to fill the front of the entire card. For my greeting, I'm stamping the banner from the Penelope's Blossoms stamp set. And I'm going to stamp that on a scrap piece of vellum with Versamark ink and sprinkle on some white embossing powder and heat set that. The banner is going to be white, and then for the greeting from the Snowy Backdrop stamp set, I'm going to use the Peace and Joy greeting and emboss that with gold embossing powder and die cut that with the coordinating die. I'm adding some little dots of glue on the back of the vellum banner, and then I'll attach that to the front of my shaker card. And this holiday shaker card is all finished. Thanks for watching this video showcasing the Lawn Fawn Snowy Backdrops stamp set. The supplies I've used are listed and linked below the video on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.